Welcome to our April council meeting. As the meeting chair, I give my consent for this open council meeting to be streamed live, recorded and published online in accordance with the council's live streaming policy and governance rules. To members of the public joining us in the gallery today, by attending this public meeting of the council, you are consenting to your image, voice and comments being recorded and published. The chair or the CEO have the discretion and authority at any time to direct the termination or interruption of live streaming. Such direction will only be given in exceptional circumstances where deemed relevant. Circumstances may include instances where the content of debate is considered misleading, defamatory or potentially inappropriate to be published. Attendees are advised that they may be subject to legal action if their actions result in inappropriate and or unacceptable behaviour or comments. Thank you. Virtual meeting statements. Part 12, COVID-19 temporary measures. The Local Government Act 2020 allows council meeting attendance by electronic means. The requirement of the meeting being open to the public is satisfied by the meeting being streamed live to council's internet. In the event of technical issues with the live stream, the meeting will be adjourned. Councils are deemed as being in attendance if they can hear proceedings, they can see other members in attendance and can be seen by other members, they can be heard to speak. Remind people, including myself, to turn off mobile telephones. Or in the case of emergency, please advise the chair and switch to silent mode. We'll just take a pause while the chair does that. Statement of acknowledgement. Bass Coast Shire Council acknowledge the Bunurong as the traditional owners and custodians of the lands and waters and pays respect to their elders past, present and emerging, for they hold the memories, the traditions, the culture and law. Bass Coast Shire Council celebrates the opportunity to embrace and empower the Aboriginal and or Torres Strait Island communities in their diversity. Bass Coast Shire Council will create opportunities for future recognition and respectful partnerships that will honour the traditional owners and custodians and Aboriginal and or Torres Strait Islander people. I'll now call on Councillor David Rooks to read the councillor statement.
Thanks, Mayor Whelan. All members of this council pledge to the Bass Coast Shire community to consider every item listed on this agenda based on the individual merits of each item, without bias or prejudice, by maintaining an open mind and disregarding councillors' personal interests so as to avoid any conflict with our public duty. Any councillor having a conflict of interest in an item will make a proper prior disclosure to the meeting and will not participate in the debate or vote on the issue.
Thank you, Councillor Rooks. Apologies. We have 3 apologies this month. Councillor Bruce Kent, Councillor Les Lark and Councillor Brett Tessari. There are no declarations of interest. So when it comes to confirmation of the minutes for the council meeting held on the 16th of March 2022, and I call on a councillor to move and a councillor to second. That's Councillor LaServe, Councillor Bauer. Those in favour? Against? Carried. Public question time. We've received 3 public questions that exceed the 50-word limit in our governance rules. These questions will not be read or included in the minutes. A written response, however, will be provided to submitters as soon as practicable after the council meeting. So the first question is from Linda Marsden and pickle relocation. PIMHAG is seeking clarification on the timeline for the relocation of Pickle to Worley Avenue, as this will impact the community hospital construction. When will Pickle move off its current site? And point 2 of that question, when will Pickle's access to the old CFA building be finalised?
Through the Mayor, Council continues to work toward the agreed November 2022 timeframe for relocation of Pickle to Worley Avenue. Council is progressing discussions with a range of community groups, including Pickle, with regards to opportunities at the CFA building. A report will be presented on this at the May Council meeting.
Second question is from Stacey Dagg, parking infringements. Council's parking infringement officers have issued a number of notices from 1/7/2021 to 31/3/2022. What is the revenue value for the notices issued?
Through the Mayor, during the period of 1 July 2021 to 31st of March 2022, there were 2,136 parking infringements issued, valued at $287,766.
Kevin Griffin, Bass Coast Ratepayers and Residents Association Governance Rules. Council's General Manager Business Transformation has confirmed that Council is reviewing its governance rules and the Act requires Council to undertake community engagement when developing and reviewing its governance rules. When will this development and review be posted to Council's Engage Bass Coast website?
Through the Mayor, should Council support the draft governance rules for community consultation at today's meeting, it will be on Engage Bass Coast between the 22nd of April and 20th of May 2022.
Kevin Griffin, Council's operational costs. Would Council please provide detailed information to its efficiency measures implemented in 2021-22 that is aimed to reduce Council's operational costs?
Through the Mayor, I am pleased to advise that the draft 2022-23 budget includes a $422,000 year-on saving for the Business Transformation Division, representing a 3.4% actual reduction in costs for the core corporate services across the organisation. When factoring in rate capping, this real efficiency saving is over 5% and a direct result of targeted efforts over a number of years. These savings have allowed further investment in capital works delivery, supporting growth and development and arts and culture experiences for our communities. The draft 22-23 budget proposes a 1.75% rate increase, which is half the current inflation rate of 3.5% and includes no reduction in service levels or standards, further highlighting our work on driving efficiencies in operations. Key initiatives that have led to these efficiencies have included implementation of Council's core technology systems to improve processes, customer experience and reduce risks, service reviews and process improvements for a range of services, ongoing organisation culture work, including our focus on customers.
Question 5, Graham Jolly, Granville Transfer Station. It's been reported Council will end the waste contract for the Granville Transfer Station this month, April 2022. Would Council please provide a tabulation of Council-owned and leased heavy equipment at the Granville Transfer Station site?
Through the Mayor, Council has taken on the operation of Granville Landfill and Transfer Station and sourced the necessary equipment to support effective management of the site. Council does not publish a detailed list of plant and equipment.
Graham Jolly, Stormwater Roadside Pits. What is Council's roads and drainage maintenance program for stormwater roadside pits? To inspect, remove each lid and clean pits to reduce or stop a road safety problem from occurring when water flows onto roads and intersections.
Through the Mayor, Council conducts proactive and reactive inspections on all stormwater pits and they are cleaned and maintained as required in accordance with Council's road management plan.
Mike and Alex Bridge, Planning Application 210336/7 Ocean View Court. Planning Application 210336. Please confirm the trees to be retained and subject to conditions 9 and 11 of the recommendation are as listed in the landscape concept and tree location plan prepared by Jardine Johnson dated 8th of December 21 as modified by condition 1A.
Through the Mayor, councillors will consider and debate all aspects and implications of this issue as part of Council's agenda.
Marg Demerg. Cape Woolamai Coast Action. How often is monitoring at the site occurring as the destruction continues to increase daily? What action has the Council taken to inform the community of the legal nature of the activities parents are encouraging their children to commit?
Through the Mayor, Council officers will continue to patrol the site daily at random times. Officers engage with anyone in the area to deter further activity and, where necessary, reinforce the protected status that this native vegetation has under state and federal legislation.
Question 9, Michael Guz, public questions. The current administration has begun censoring and banishing reasonable and legitimate public questions by preventing the questions from being presented to ordinary council meetings and by not recording the questions in the meeting minutes. In the past 12 months, how many public questions have been censored in this way?
Through the Mayor, Council delivers public question time in accordance with the governance rules. Submitters are advised when their question has been disallowed.
And that's the end of public questions. It brings us to petitions, joint letters Deputations and correspondence. The first one, petition shared path for pedestrians and cyclists between Ventnor and Cowes. I call on Councillor to move and second the resolution. Councillor Rook, Councillor Halstead. Councillor Rook.
Just happy to accept the recommendation. Thank you.
Councillor Halstead.
Put to the vote.
Well, those in favour? That's carried. That brings us to E.2 Petition, preserve the Harberton Road Nature and Recreation Reserves by designating them a permanent green wedge as a matter of urgency. I have a councillor move, that's Councillor Halstead, seconded Councillor Bauer. No debate, we'll put that vote.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I did wish to ask a question in relation to this one, and I'm pleased to see that council officers will report back to council in the July meeting. I just wanted to ask officers if they could please advise the planning process that's required for such a request. I think through you, Mr Mayor, it might be Mr Sturton.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, through you. The reserve in question will require a planning scheme amendment to change their zoning. At the moment, they are road reserve, so for this status will be public park and recreation zone. Planning scheme amendment can take anywhere between 10 and 18 months, depending on submissions. The road reserves also might need a formal discontinuation process as well, which will be an additional few months. So their planning scheme amendment will take the best part of the year or thereabouts.
Thank you, Mr Sturton.
Mr Sturton, those in favour? It's carried. Notice of motion, the first one, 246 of Leg 22, Basque Coast Skate Strategy 2018-2028, Councillor Halstead. Would you read your motion, Councillor Halstead, without speaking to it?
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. Actually going to propose an amendment to this notice of motion if
Do we have the motion available?
up
We can just
screen.
that come up on the screen.
It's just a change to point 4, which is taking out reference to a specific site of the Vietnam Veterans Museum. Councillors are more comfortable with that point
Okay,
4.
all right. And do we have a seconder for that notice of motion? Councillor Bauer. Councillor Halstead.
Yes, through you, Mr Mayor, I'd like to ask a couple of questions on this one prior to going into preamble, if that's appropriate, Mr Mayor.
It's your notice of motion, though. Who are you going to ask a question of?
I just wanted to ask of the officers when the consultant place, because of the officers' comments at the bottom of the agenda, when the consultant place was engaged for the purposes of the skate review.
Mr Sturton? Or is that Ms Woodlands? Mr Woodland, I had to run that through my head. We had a new acting general manager today and just had to bring myself up to date.
Through you, Mr Mayor. Thank you. The precise date will be taken on notice. That's Councillor Halstead, but we do understand it was in recent months. I also appreciate being actively speaking for that work to get underway at the earliest opportunity. So.
Thank you, Mr Woodland. I also would like to ask officers what the process is following a resolution of a notice of motion by this council. So once a notice of motion is resolved, what is the process then for it to be acted upon? Through, I think it might be through you, Mr Mayor, to Mr Mack.
Thanks, Councillor Halstead. Through you, Mr Mayor. Officers will implement council's decision as early as possible. We'll undertake a consideration on what resources are required to do that. However, we will implement council's decision.
Thank you, Mr Mack. And lastly, through you again, Mr Mayor, I'd like to flag that as part of the governance rules, council considers what is a satisfactory timeframe in which a notice of motion is acted upon. I won't
allow that. We'll stick to the notice of motion that's before us without straying into other matters. So I'd ask you to start speaking to your notice of motion.
Appreciate that, Mr Mayor. Thank you. So reading the revision history on the current skate strategy, I note this document dates back to 2017, and I'm told discussions around a regional skate park have been ongoing since 2015. As we all know, Council supported a regional skate park in October 2018 with a $650,000 grant committed by the Victorian State Government at the time. This commitment created an expectation in our community for a regional facility. Unfortunately, the site in San Remo was found to be unsuitable, as was the site in Graydon's Reserve Newhaven that Council now supports as a local facility through a notice of motion I brought to this Council in April 2021. Part of my April 2021 notice of motion was to identify a new location for a regional facility. It was suggested to me at the time that a review of the skate strategy would be required, and therefore this was added to the notice of motion as a third point. More than 12 months later, a consultant has been engaged when there is nothing wrong with the current strategy and the intent of Council has not changed. The strategy just needs minor amendments. Some might suggest the delay has caused the heartbreaking reality of significant damage to the Cape Woolamai foreshore, where our young people have taken matters into their own hands and created their own BMX track. The Cape Woolamai Coastal Action Group, who carry out works regularly with weed control, planting in partnership with Landcare, and work tirelessly to protect this important vegetation, took me on a tour of this area recently. It is clear this vegetation will play an important role in protecting the area against coastal erosion into the future. The work of our youth, dare I say, is quite ingenious, and I have no doubt has created a place for them to meet and have a lot of fun with friends. The track is significant in size and creates a concern for the safety of users, but in saying that, you can't help but appreciate the effort they have gone to. This situation only highlights the desperate need for facilities near Cape Woolamai, San Remo and Newhaven. Council currently has Graydon's Reserve as the priority project, and I ask that we consider whether the regional site should be the priority. I have had discussions with General. If I could ask for an extension, I don't have much further to go. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have had discussions with the general managers of Vietnam Veterans Museum, councillors over the past 18 months about the opportunity the old museum and surrounding area presents. With the Vietnam vets working toward a new site across the road, the old site could be utilised as an indoor-outdoor facility, not dissimilar to that of the Shed in Cranbourne East, a very popular facility in the city of Casey. This site could be master planned for a BMX track, indoor and outdoor skate facility, fitting in with the closely located Bass Coast Board Riders Club, creating a youth hub specifically catering to youth. Just one more paragraph, Mr. Mayor, and I'm finished.
Indulgence.
I understand Council has a duty of care to act on the reports of the makeshift BMX track created by the kids on Crown land, that is Cape Woolamai foreshore, but rather than hold a big stick, tell the kids what they can't do and remove their work. Council needs to consider addressing the core issue that the kids are clearly communicating a need. I therefore respectfully request the support of my fellow councillors in acting with urgency to show the voices of our youth are being heard loud and clear, because I know that we all feel strongly about provisions for our youth. Supporting this notice of motion will show we support them and we are prepared to act. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Bauer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't think I could add anything to that speech, and for the sake of time, expediency, I have nothing further to add.
Any other councillor wish to speak to the notice of motion? Councillor Rooks.
Yeah, I worry that this notice of motion makes decisions during and prior to the work the strategy is investigating. For me, the research that goes into developing the skate strategy will determine the best outcomes, and my decision making will be based on the strategy and not this notice of motion. So I will not be supporting this notice of motion.
Thank you, Councillor Rooks. Any other councillor wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, I'm going to support this notice of motion, and probably it's raised its head again, even though the review has started on the skate strategy around that BMX track need, and I'm happy to support item number 3 in this and the amended item number 4. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Sir. Any other councillor wish to speak? Councillor Lang.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I really appreciate the intent of Councillor Halstead, but I think we really are preempting the findings of the strategy, and the strategy actually has a lot of public consultation that will include the voices of youth across the Shire, not just those that are in Cape Woolamai. I know that, you know, unfortunately, youth are pretty inventive across the Shire in creating their own BMX tracks, and Wonthaggi had a BMX track quite ingeniously built in a Crown land area, which they shouldn't have constructed. And I think that, yes, I fully support a review of the skate strategy we are already undertaking. And I also welcome the public consultation process that is undertaken through that, which this motion doesn't allow for. So unfortunately, in light of ensuring that we are consulting properly with the community and following the correct process with engagement, and also making sure that the approach is equitable across the Shire, I will not be supporting this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Lang. Councillor Halstead in reply.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor, and I thank councillors for their input. What I would say is that the notice of motion before you is actually not preempting anything that would be in the strategy. It's asking for consideration to be given to certain points in the strategy. Consideration is not asking for it to be adopted, but to be considered. It's also requesting options for site analysis. I can't see how that can be preempting any strategy that comes before council. I agree with Councillor Rooks and Councillor Leserve that strategy is very important. However, I feel in this case that if it stymies the wishes of our community, then we need to bring this to the chamber and have it moved on. So I do understand your concern that you may be seeing this as a preemptive strike on strategy. But if you read the points of the notice of motion, you will see that it's actually not asking to be preemptive. It's asking for consideration of certain matters. And I don't see that that's preempting strategy. So I'll leave it at that, Mr Mayor, and happy to put to the vote.
Councillor Halstead. Those in favour? Those against? That vote is tied. I'll call again those in favour. Those against? And with the Mayor's casting vote, that is lost. The division, those in favour? Councillor Halstead, Councillor Bauer, Councillor Leserve. Those against? Councillor Whelan, Councillor Rooks and Councillor Lang. And with a casting vote, that is lost. That brings us to F2, 247 22 Anderson Street Car Park. Councillor Ron Bauer. I ask the councillor to read his motion without speaking to it, please.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Motion that the redevelopment of the Anderson Street car park be halted and the plans be redesigned to incorporate the 3 gum trees that have been designated to be cleared in the current plans. 2, that the new design of the car park turning circle is brought back 15 metres as in the original concept drawings. 3, the council officers obtain an arborist report confirming the health of the 3 gum trees.
Thank you, Councillor Bauer, and you're moving
That's a
as seconder for that motion.
I'm happy to second for purpose.
Councillor Halstead. Councillor Bauer.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Mr Mayor, fellow councillors and members of the public. The east side of the Anderson Street car park, which is currently gravel, is used as an overflow. It's only required for December and January. The proposed redevelopment of this car park in its current form is nothing short of botanic vandalism. Council officers have called the 3 gum trees weeds. You can't call these majestic mature gum trees weeds. Just because they're not native to Phillip Island is no reason to rip them out. Nobody would contemplate removing cypress trees that create a canopy to the entrance of cows because they're not native. Councillors, we were shellacked, and rightly so, for cutting down 15 trees for the transit centre. Also, we've played a game of Twister to save the trees at the new cultural centre. Are we really destroying these three majestic trees and native vegetation just because a ditch would need to be filled in and a drain would have to be extended? Are we really prioritising a man-made structure over living, breathing flora? I'm bitterly disappointed in the attitude of my fellow ward councillors on this.
Councillor Bauer, stick to the resolution, just not comment on other councillors, any other officers. Thank you, councillor.
Where it's the support for climate change, environment, doesn't land care include tree care? I can't believe that this issue, I am the only tree hugger in the ward. I met nearly all the residents directly affected by this current design for the car park. All of them voiced a lack of consultation by council. One of them summed it up neatly by saying the current design was drawn up by an engineer and a person not sympathetic to the environment. Under this proposal, the three majestic gum trees will be destroyed, as well as significant quantity of native vegetation on the east and southern side of the car park. The removal of vegetation on the southern boundary of the car park is particularly disturbing because the property's boundary will become exposed and suffer significant and unacceptable loss of privacy. The turning circle at the east end will face directly into the yard of one of the properties. By moving the design northward by only a few metres, the contiguous properties will retain their privacy and the gum trees will be saved. Some of the vegetation on the north side would need to be removed.
I'll ask you to wind up now, councillor.
One paragraph to go. The lost native vegetation cannot be offset by planting the gaps on the north side, which would arrest the erosion. The Mayor commissioned a report by John Eddy from PICS. In it, he confirms the trees are not weeds and states undoubtedly they have some habitat value, particularly in areas like Anderson Street car park, where there are no other large trees present. This is the only overflow park. This is only an overflow car park and is only required infrequently. Through our various policies and now with the impending drought, we are trying to keep the feel of the amenity of Phillip Island. I urge that we place a moratorium on this project, partly till we go back to the drawing board. As this car park will be needed before late December, we have plenty of time.
That's a long paragraph, councillor. Can we wrap it? Okay, councillor Halstead.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't have anything further to add other than to say that given Councillor Bauer is requesting an arborist's report, I'm confident in supporting his notice of motion. My concern would be around the trees remaining there and then causing damage further down the track. So if an arborist report is sought and the trees are safe enough to remain, then I'd be happy to support Councillor Bauer in his motion.
Thank you, councillor Halstead. Any other councillor wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Rooks.
Yeah, I'd like to focus on Phillip Island as a destination for boating activities. We're very lucky there to have facilities both at Newhaven and Rill, and they're well used. We've also got, now it's been highlighted, the Cowes Boat Ramp, and Better Boating Victoria has been working with council on improving the ramp there at the end of Anderson Street and also with at the car park. This is really important work because for those locals that know, if you need a good giggle in the afternoon, you go down and watch people trying to get on and off that ramp at the moment. It's not a good situation and it needs improving. As it improves, okay, we can expect the demand to be increased for the use of that ramp and also the demand for car park. So we need to have this car park in place. The studies show that if you have 2 lanes on a car park, you should have 50 car parks. If there's 3 lanes on the ramp, sorry, if you've got 2 lanes on the ramp, the boat ramp, you need 50 car parks. If you have 3 ramps, you need 75 car parks. We don't know exactly the design yet. There's 24 car parks down here at the moment. We're going to add another 20, that makes 44. We're still going to fall short of the demand that we can expect for the area. As already mentioned by Councillor Bauer, there's already an area that's used on the east side informally, and the new design has already been adjusted to recognise some of the local residents and their needs. It's been moved 5 metres further forward up to the coastal fringe of the vegetation there, and it would be ridiculous to go further into that coastal vegetation with climate change. Everything's been done trying to minimise vegetation loss. I appreciate the 3 southern mahogany trees that are there. Unfortunately, they need to be removed to complete the new design. I cringe when any vegetation is removed and note the habitat loss for the wildlife. However, these trees are not indigenous to the island and they can interbreed with other vegetation, which is not what we want for our local vegetation. I encourage the new local Cows Coastal Group, which has just been recently formed, to work with council to revegetate this Moona Woodlands area and build up the gaps in the vegetation there. So I don't support this notice of motion.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Rooks. Any other councillor wish to speak to the motion? If not, Councillor Bauer in response.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, Councillor Rooks, this is not a new ramp, it's a ramp that's been used for a long, long time, and the redevelopment of the ramp does not provide more access to it. In closing though, if it ain't broke, why fix it? This overflow car park is only used 12 times a year. Why destroy our natural beauty when what is needed is more single car park spaces for beachgoers? By putting a moratorium on this redevelopment, we would save the more important vegetation which lies all on the south side, including the 3 gum trees, and maintain the contiguous residents' privacy. I have been informed that the state monies set aside for this project are available until December. Let's go back to the drawing board and get an outcome that would be a win-win for residents, boaties, and the floor.
Thank you, Councillor Bauer. Those in favour? Against? The motion is lost.
Division, Mr. Mayor.
Division, I can't say that. Division. Those in favour? Councillor Bauer, Councillor Halstead. Those against? Councillor Whelan, Councillor Rooks, Councillor Lasserve and Councillor Lang. The motion is lost. Mayor and Councillor reports. The Mayor's report will be put into the minutes. I ask the councillors to forego the opportunity to present the report in favour of them occurring in the minutes. So it brings us to section 8, reports requiring council decision. Planning application 7 Ocean View Court, Inverloch. Mr Sturton to introduce the report, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The purpose of this report is to present planning application 210336, which seeks to extend the existing dwelling, construct a detached garage and remove vegetation at 7 Ocean View Court, Inverloch. The land is zoned general residential zone 1 and is within a vegetation protection overlay, design and development overlay schedule 1 and the design and development overlay schedule 9. The application was advertised and it received 18 objections. The application has been considered and assessed against the First Coast Planning Scheme. It is recommended that council resolve to issue a notice of decision to grant a planning permit as per the conditions outlined in the report, which includes the retention of tree 1 of the matter. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
We have a councillor to move and a councillor to second the report. Councillor Lang. Councillor Rooks, Councillor Lang.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just seeking some clarification, if I may, on this motion.
Sorry, were you moving the
I'm moving
well?
the motion. I'd like to
all
seek
right,
some
if you want clarification. Go
on the
ahead.
report. I noticed that both the arborist report and the council officer report is silent on what will occur with trees 15 and 16, which are at the front of the house and quite significant. And they are considered to offer substantial protection and habitat for wildlife. What mechanisms and conditions are in place to ensure these trees are protected?
Mr Sturton.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, all trees located at the 7 Ocean View Court Inverloch are afforded protection under the vegetation protection overlay. Only one tree, which was tree 1, the manor gum, was proposed to be removed in this application, which within the conditions is proposed to be retained. So trees 15 and 16, despite being omitted from the arborist report, afforded the same protection as all other trees, including the tree protection zone that would have to be installed during construction.
And just really quickly further to that, would the tree protection zones be in place for trees 15 and 16?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, that's correct.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to begin by thanking everyone who's made a submission to this planning application. It has been quite a substantial development and
Whoops. Has
quite some. It is a big extension, and there was a lot of concern around the protection of the highly significant manor gum. I think it's around 17 metres high. I've met with both council officers and a number of the objectors, and I also met with the applicant who purchased a home in this beautiful spot and justifiably wants to take advantage of their large block and enjoy that property as well, which they're entitled to do within the ambit of the planning rules. The site area covers about 1,500 square metres. I just wanted to thank the submitters as well. And going through the process of considering this application, I have been reassured by the rigorous process that council goes through to ensure that these kinds of developments are both suitable and also reflect the character and amenity of the neighbourhood. Council has to have legitimate grounds for rejecting applications, and the other side of that is that we also need to have legit grounds to approve them. Otherwise, we do sort of feel the wrath of VCAT. I acknowledge that it's a big renovation, but the big block allows for it. The vegetation protection overlay in this area has been quite successful, and it means that applicants need to apply before removing significant trees. And in this case, the conditions will not allow for the removal of any of the trees, and they will also be required to be protected. The rest of the development is regarded as consistent with the planning rules governing that area and has been recommended to be approved, subject to new conditions, including installing tree protection zones. As I just
wind up, Councillor Lang.
Council officers has worked with council officers, the wider community and the applicant to achieve a suitable outcome, and I will be recommending this motion for approval.
Thank you, Councillor Lang. Councillor Rooks.
No, thank you, Councillor Lang, for that comprehensive discussion. I've got nothing further to add.
Any other councillor wish to speak to this resolution? If not, Councillor Lang, in response?
Put it to a vote, thank you.
Okay. Those in favour? It's carried. Brings us to H2. Planning application 28 Station Street, Dale, to Mr. Sturton to introduce the report, please.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The purpose of this report is to present planning application 210497, which seeks to subdivide the land into 46 lots, the removal of existing easements, and works within the land subject to inundation overlay at 28 Station Street, Halstead. The land is on township zone and subject to a development plan which was approved by council in 2018. As the proposal is in accordance with the approved development plan, the need for public notice is exempt. The application before council as the proposed development is in excess of $3 million. The application has been considered and assessed against the best case plan sketch. It has also been referred to all relevant referral agencies, including the Catchment Authority. All of them have no objections to the proposal. It is recommended that council resolve to issue a planning permit as per the conditions outlined in the report. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Sturton. Can I have a councillor move and a councillor to second the report? Councillor Lasserve, Councillor Halstead. Councillor Lasserve.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Look, I think this is fairly straightforward one. It's been before council before. We've had a fair amount of discussion over it, the planning of the new subdivision in that back area of Dalston. The land has been, this has been held over for a number of years. It's been a part of the stage plan. So I think it's quite straightforward, really. So I'm happy to move the recommendation by the officers.
Thank you, Councillor Lasserve. Councillor Halstead.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I agree. I think the proposals covered all the bases. I do note that council did ask some questions around the drainage, and I'm pleased to see that that has been addressed. I also would like to point out this is quite a significant development given the size of Dalston, and at its current size, this will add quite a number of new lots, so new families coming into the area, and it's good to see that the developer has provided a variety of block sizes, which is also nice. I would suggest that we continue our advocacy to Regional Roads Victoria for upgrades to Bass Highway to accommodate for added population, which is only going to continue to grow in that area. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, councillor Halstead. Does any other councillor wish to speak to the motion? If not, councillor Sir.
Nothing further, Chair.
We put the resolution. Those in favour? That is carried. Brings us to H.3 Planning Application for Raywood Avenue Cows. Mr Sturton to introduce the report, please.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The purpose of this report is to present Planning Application 210501, which seeks to remove vegetation of all Raywood Avenue cows. The land is zoned General Residential Zone 1 and is within the Vegetation Protection Overlay. The application received 3 objections and was called in by council. The application has been considered and assessed against the Bass Coast Planning Scheme. It is recommended the council resolve to issue a notice of decision to grant a planning permit as per the conditions outlined in the report. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Mr Sturton. Could I have a councillor move the motion? Councillor Rooks.
Alternate motion, please.
Alternate motion. Will you have that available to go on the screen?
Just working on it.
Got the egg counter going.
I'm very patient.
Right, having a moment.
Would you like to take us through the change you're proposing?
Scroll down a little bit, please. Robin will scroll up so we can see a little bit further down. The only change to the alternate motion is in section 1 there, A1, or too far, A1. So the previous motion had the retention of trees numbered 1, 2 and 5. Now the motion reads retention of trees numbered 1, 2, 5 and 15.
Okay, so councillor Rooks has moved that. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Halstead, councillor Rooks.
Thanks, Mayor Whelan. I became aware of this application through a number of objectors, and the initial application had removing 8 trees from the property. Since then, council officers have worked with the landholder and kept 3 of these trees, which is a good positive outcome. I've suggested a 4th tree through this alternate motion. The tree is T15 and it's situated in the southwest corner of the property and doesn't pose any issues to the single-storey dwelling that's been designed. It's a manigum that is Indigenous to the local area. I thank the officers for their work on this application. I think it's a good outcome. The design of the building doesn't impact the areas of the trees that are now remaining, those 4. And so that's why I put this motion forward.
Thank you, councillor Rooks. Councillor Halstead.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. Seems that we're in love with trees at this council meeting, which is really great to see. So whenever trees can be retained, I'm happy to support. So I have nothing further to add, and I congratulate councillor Rooks on raising this.
Thank you, councillor Halstead. Any other councillor wish to speak to this motion? If not, councillor Rooks.
No, happy to put it to
a vote. Those in favour? That's carried. It brings us to H.4 Smith's Beach Town Plan. Mr Sturton to introduce the report, please.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The purpose of this report is to present for adoption the Smiths Beach Town Plan. The Town Plan proposes 4 game-changer projects consisting of a trail that links Smiths Beach and YCW, the completion of the YCW activity area master plan, reimagining the Smiths Beach car path and enhancing the existing town centre. Consultation for the town plan was conducted for 12 weeks from 22nd of July 2021 until 15th of October, which included extensions being granted from community requests. The consultation period included the establishment of a reference group and community panel, mail out to all ratepayers and residents, document reviewed by the Bauer and Land Council, website updates and media releases, social media and print media posts, physical signage alerting to the project, and 2 Q&A sessions that were conducted virtually. Implementation of the Smiths Beach Town Plan is scheduled in the long-term financial plan from 2025 until 2029, with the YCW activity area master plan scheduled to commence design work next financial year, deliver it over the subsequent 4 years. The Smith Beach Town Plan is presented to the council for adoption. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Mr Sturton. Have a councillor move that motion. Councillor Rooks, seconded. Councillor Halstead, thank you. Councillor Rooks.
Thank you, Mayor Whelan. And thanks, Mr Sturton, for those words. And we do recognise the significant consultation that's happened in regards to the Smith Beach Master Plan, including the release of the draft plan, also for feedback to the community. And thanks for keeping us up to date as councillors over that period of time. It's a very popular area to live and also exceptionally popular to visit the Smith Beach area. It's important environmentally to protect the area from overuse while still allowing people to enjoy what Smith Beach and YCW Beach have to offer. Parts of this plan aim to reduce the impact cars have on the area and focus more on safe pedestrian access, and also creating pedestrian-friendly spaces. The game changers 1, 2, 3 and 4 all support this thinking. Communities across our country and the world are realising the imposition cars have on destinations, and we are no different. We've got our Wonthaggi and Cows Activity Centre plan, which focus on pedestrian movement, and also now this Smith Beach Master Plan. So I commend the overall purpose of this plan. I'd like to also comment on Game Changer 1, the pathway from Smith Beach to YCW, which has been contentious. Historically, access to much of Phillip Island's coast has been removed from the public domain. This was through inappropriate planning, which has allowed private access over public access to many precious coastal areas. Having lived here for 20 years, I know this is not the result the wider community want. They would like to have access to their public areas. The walk between the two car parks is a stunning walk with amazing views. It should be available for all to access, and importantly, this can happen through the Smith Beach Master Plan. Currently, access is available to just 31 private homes who get to enjoy this walk. And I acknowledge that those residents don't support this game changer. However, I look forward to seeing this section of the island being opened up to the wider community. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rooks. Councillor Halstead.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to congratulate council officers who at the moment are doing continued significant work in putting together these plans right across the Shire, and they are important documents that will see us move forward into the future. So they're well needed and have been lacking. So I'm really pleased that work's being done. I would like to acknowledge the significant number of emails that I've received with concerns around the pathway that Councillor Rooks has just spoken about, and I have raised this with officers. I am satisfied that this is just a starting point. There will be more opportunity for community to be engaged in the design process, and at quite a few spots along the way where they'll get to speak further on what council plans to do. It's a tough one, and I do know that Councillor Rooks has pointed it out as being public land, but my understanding is that it's private property at the moment. So just to clarify that it's not actually public land, it is private property, but you know, it's included as part of the design, but there's more work to be done in this area. So I'm prepared to support it in the interim and look forward to further discussion with the community of Smiths Beach moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Halstead. Any other councillor, sir?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Look, just in the background of this one, Smith Beach Town Plan has been, on council's books as such for quite a long time. I would hate to jeopardise the process that we've gone through so far, and the community impact, and the community consultation, and there was community consultation with the town plan back in 2020. It's really important. There was 12 weeks of community consultation, as Councillor Halstead said. We've all been hit with a number of emails for the objectors on this one. I think it's only just the start of that design process, and there'll be further discussions held with them. But I certainly wouldn't want to hold back something that we've worked hard to put into the community and make that a better space for people.
Thank you, Councillor Lasserve. Any other councillor wish to speak to the motion? If not, Councillor Rooks, would you wish to reply?
Just to reiterate what both Councillor Halstead and Councillor Zerva said, that this is the high-level plan, and more detailed planning will take place as we go through each of those game changes and the other action points, and there'll be further consultation then.
Thank you, Councillor Rooks. Those in favour? That's carried. Brings us to H.1 Planning Cemetery Abstract Account 2020-21. Mr. Mack, to introduce the report, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The purpose of this report is to present the Wonthaggi Cemetery Abstract of Accounts. This report is an annual statutory reporting requirement regarding the financial position and performance of the trust for Class B cemeteries reporting to the Department of Health and Human Services. In 2020-21, Wonthaggi Cemetery had a slight reduction in bodily interments and slight increase in interments of cremated remains when compared to previous years. Financially, there was a net loss of $20,478.60 and a perpetual trust contribution of $13,014.71. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mack. Can I have a councillor move the motion attached to that report? Councillor Lang and Councillor Halstead. Yep. Councillor Lang.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As trustees, council has an obligation to our community to manage Wonthaggi Cemetery to a high standard while ensuring that the management of the cemetery is financially sustainable. As Council Officer Wayne Mack said, for the 2021 financial year, there have been a couple of factors that have contributed to the cemetery returning a net loss of more than $20,000. This was caused by a slight reduction in bodily interments and the fact we had caused fee increases because of the COVID-19 global pandemic. The loss is being monitored closely because as cemetery trustees, we are obligated to ensure that we are able to meet our obligations into the long term. And this duty means that financial viability is essential. And if this loss continues, we need to explore a number of options, which I think is already underway. So I will be putting this motion forward for recommendation to approve.
Thank you, Councillor Lang. Councillor Halstead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If I could ask a question of the officers, and if I can, I know it's the next one is on the agenda is the San Remo Cemetery Abstract of Accounts. So I'm going to speak to both. This is meant to be for both. Could you please advise the current status of the cemetery operations review, which I know that council is undertaking at the moment?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, council officers are actively working through an actuary process. Part of this includes finalising a design to understand the potential financial revenue and expenditure for each cemetery before discussion with the cemetery trusts. I anticipate this work to be completed in the coming few months.
Thank you, Mr. Mack. Mr. Mayor, I have had a bit of an interest in the area of the cemeteries. It is obviously disappointing to see they've made a loss this time round, but obviously there are reasons. That global pandemic, as Councillor Lang has pointed out, hasn't helped, although we seem to be blaming a lot on global pandemics in the world lately, not just in council here, but I am looking forward to that review. I think that council does need to take a look at the management of both sites. I also think we need to consider the presentation of our cemeteries, and maybe there's, you know, people don't want to lay to rest their loved ones in, you know, a substandard cemetery or presented in a substandard way. So I think there is a lot of work that we can do in this area, and I'm really looking forward to seeing that review. Was it back in July? Did we state that? Was it in the coming months, wasn't it? So it won't be too far off. So I look forward to seeing what the proposals are and how we can best offer this service for our community.
Thank you, Councillor Halstead. Any other councillor wish to speak to the motion? If not, Councillor Lang, did you wish to reply?
Nothing further to add.
All right, those in favour? And that's carried, which brings us to 86, San Remo Cemetery Abstract of Accounts 2020-21. Mr. Mack to report, please. Introduce the report, I should say.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Similar to last report, the purpose of this report is to present the San Remo Cemetery Abstract of Accounts. In 2020-21, San Remo Cemetery had a reduction in interments to 1. Interments of cremated remains remain consistent with previous years. Financially, there was a net loss of $14,540.65 and a perpetual trust contribution of $377.71. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mack. Can I have a councillor move and a councillor to second? Councillor Halstead and seconded Councillor Lang. Councillor Halstead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Nothing further to add from my
Had you say?
statements.
Councillor Lang,
Nothing further to add.
you're happy? Does any other councillor wish to speak to the motion?
I just would like to state, Mr.
Councillor
Mayor,
Lasser.
just to remind everybody and councillors that council do add to a general maintenance and administration support as a subsidy to help prevent greater loss. So, you know, I'd be like the other councillors keen to see the books when they come back in a couple of months.
Thank you, Councillor Lasser. Does any other councillor wish to speak to the motion? Not Councillor Halstead, you happy to put?
Happy to put to the vote. Thank
Those
you.
in favour? That's carried. Brings us to 87, governance rules. Mr. Mack to introduce the report, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The purpose of this report is to present draft governance rules to council recommending endorsement to progress the community consultation. The draft governance rules have been reviewed to include updates to clarify processes, address inconsistencies and strengthen good governance during election periods. Areas with the proposed changes include election of the mayor, remote electronic meeting attendance, notices of motion, election period policy and public question time, as well as some other administrative changes. Public consultation period is recommended to seek community feedback for a period of 4 weeks between 22 April and 20 May 2022. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mack. Can I have a councillor move second the motion? And I hear a voice over there. Councillor Bauer.
Yes, I'd like to move an alternative, please.
We have that up on the screen, please.
I have to read it, it'll say.
Yeah, well, if you start reading, oh, here we go.
My alternative, Mr. Mayor, is that the council defer consideration of the draft governance rule for community consultation until May 2022 council meeting.
Thank you, Councillor Bauer. You've moved that. Is there a seconder?
I'm happy to
I've got to
second.
find your screen now. Councillor Halstead. Okay. Councillor Bauer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, fellow councillors, and especially the members of the gallery, either here or in person watching online. Our first responsibility is to the community. The governance rules are as presented, I believe, truncate accountability and transparency to our community, especially in the sections pertaining to public question time. Also, the section on election periods needs to be looked at again, as I believe as presented, the rules could handicap any councillor's ability to fulfil their duty as a councillor if they wish to stand for either state or federal parliament. These are only 2 examples why I believe these rules need to be looked at again. I suggested many more when I submitted my amendments to the rules and was guaranteed a one-on-one with our governance team to discuss my amendments. I know that other councillors also wish to have these discussions with the governance team. I and the other councillors have not had this meeting. Neither have councillors as a group had a briefing to understand why certain changes are being made. Those certain stipulations are mandated by the Local Government Act. These are the rules that we conduct our day-to-day business. These are the rules that the community interacts with these meetings. We owe it to ourselves, we owe it to the ratepayers to get this right. I therefore move a motion to defer the adoption of the governance rules until we have a briefing by the governance team on the proposed changes or individual councillors who wish to have a one-on-one meeting with the governance team. We've had the opportunity to do so. I move the motion to defer.
Just before I call on the seconder, I want to clarify a point there because we don't want to misrepresent it. Briefings were offered on a one-on-one basis and also as a ward basis prior to this. Councillor Halstead.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. I am seconding this request for deferral by Councillor Bauer, mainly because I have a number of questions in relation to the governance rules, but also that it's my understanding that a draft governance rules should be that which is released to the community for public comment, is that the community has an expectation that those rules are what this council, or as close to as is possible, that this council supports. So in draft form, yes, but that those governance rules are what we as a council are looking to adopt. And I do understand that it comes back after community consultation. The community get to have their say. It then comes back to council. Council can amend, adopt, do what we normally do in this chamber. But I do believe that as a draft, that it should be what we as a council wish to see in that policy. And because I have so many questions around it, I've come to the realisation that it doesn't actually state in there how I as a councillor wish to operate. So therefore, I think Councillor Bauer has a right to defer, and I'll be supporting him in that deferral.
Thank you, Councillor Halstead. Does any other councillor wish to speak to this motion?
You go first.
Councillor Lefebvre.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Look, as the report is in the document in our agenda, it's really just the exposure draft. It's an exhibition for exhibition purposes to put this out to the community for consultation. It's not a final document. There will be 4 weeks consultation through Engage Bass Coast, and that's really important that people do that. But what I'm hearing here is that a number of councillors still aren't up to speed on some of the detail in the report. So look, I'm probably happy to defer it. I just wouldn't like to think that they weren't on board as well and thought that they needed further information, and that it'd be brought back in May. Is that what we're saying in the May meeting? So it is only for 4 weeks. I would have been happier that we ran it parallel with the community consultation, because I think that's important. We're all about getting it out there and getting people's opinion about it, but clearly there's some concerns from councillors who need to be given a briefing about it. So that's it.
Councillor Rooks.
I'm just interested to hear feedback from the community, so I see no harm in releasing it in its current form. Always interested to hear what the community's got to say. Then a report will come back, and then we can make an informed decision then, having the community's information back to us and also the knowledge of the council staff. I don't see the need for us to get involved further at this point in time.
Thank you, Councillor Rooks.
Could I ask a secondary question?
Yes. Councillor Lefebvre.
Just a point of clarification
Two.
through you, Mr Mayor, to the governance team, just to whether or not we'd be in breach of any local government act in not having our governance policy in place by the 30th of June or...
Mr Mack, can you go to the implications of a deferral if there are any?
Through you, Mr Mayor, we wouldn't be in breach of any acts as we have adopted governance rules.
Okay, thank you, Mr Mack. Any other councillor wish to? Now I'm confused. Yes, any other councillor wish to speak to the motion? There being no other councillor to speak to the motion. Councillor Bauer in reply.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I just want to restate what Councillor Halstead said. I think she summed it up very well. Where we as a group should have be more or less on the common ground, because when this draft goes out, the community, whether rightly or wrongly, will believe this is our position. And even though we here know that we can't play with it, they will think that this is where we are. And that's why I'm moving this alternative motion, so that we move forward as a team. And I have, just before I sum up, a question to the officers. by moving this, does the community consultation move 1 month as well? That's what I'd like to ask.
Sorry, clarify the question again, please.
We defer this report for 1 month. The community consultation is deferred by 1 month as well?
Mr. Mack.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, that's correct.
Yeah, so the whole process just moves 1 month. So nobody is disadvantaged, and we as a group can get our common thoughts together. And I therefore commend this motion to a vote.
Thank you, Councillor Bauer. Those in favour? Against? It's in a joyful position again. The motion vote is tied. Those in favour? Against? On the Mayor's casting vote, it's lost.
Division, Mr. Mayor.
A division, those in favour? Councillor Bauer, Councillor Third, Councillor Halstead, those against? Councillor Whelan, Councillor Rooks, Councillor Lang, and on the Mayor's casting vote, it is lost. That brings us to the substantive motion in the report. Can I have a councillor move that motion, please? Councillor Rooks, second, and Councillor Lang. Councillor Rooks.
The governance rules is a very important document that sets out how we operate as a council. And I believe in continuous improvement, and there is opportunities to improve our government policies. I'd like to hear from the community and to see what they've got to say. That's all.
Councillor Lang.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That I wholeheartedly agree with Councillor Rooks. The governance rules purpose is to guide the conduct of council meetings and institute decision-making processes so that these meetings are held with respect and democratically. I think this draft, which all councillors have had an opportunity and chosen not to take it for whatever reason, to provide feedback on. And I think that I'm really looking forward to hearing from the community on this, and I don't want to delay that public consultation any further.
Any other councillor? Thanks, Councillor Lang. Does any other councillor wish to speak to the motion?
Yes, I will. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Halstead.
I have got a few questions, but I'd also say that council has been operating on governance rules already for the past 18 months. So I'm disappointed that we have to consider this as the recommendation and that we couldn't defer, but that's the decision of the council and I'll respect that. I would like to ask the Mayor, or through you, Mr. Mayor, to please give us an indication on, as far as these governance rules are concerned. It says electronic means has been made available through legislation, and so if it is technically available, on what grounds would a councillor be denied access to a meeting electronically?
Mr. Beck, I'll ask you to reply to that, but these questions can be dealt with as part of the engagement process. This is not adopting these rules. Just let me clarify for anyone listening. This is not an adoption resolution.
No,
but this is a motion proposing to put these onto engaged facts codes for consultation over the next period. Mr. Mack.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the proposed change to the governance rules is to allow councillors to attend meetings virtually or electronically where legislation permits that to be done so.
it's my understanding in the proposed governance rules that the CEO and Mayor have the ability to deny access to a meeting to a councillor, for a councillor to a meeting. And I'm asking on what grounds can that occur?
Mr. Mack, can you clarify that? That doesn't sound right to me.
Yes, I'm going to have to take that on notice and work through that. I'm more than happy to sit with any councillor and work through, the brief.
So, Councillor Halstead, I ask you to speak to the resolution.
The recommendation is for council to endorse the draft governance rules, and I have some further questions in relation to those rules, Mr. Mayor. there is also, as part of the draft governance rules, which we're asking to endorse and to be put out for public consultation, that there be an increase in notices of motion to be in by 2 days. So currently it's 8 days prior to a meeting and it's requesting for 10 days. Is there a reason that we're requesting another 2 days?
I'm not prepared to go through each and every one of these questions. You're speaking to or against the motion, so I ask you to do that.
But I'm asking questions, Mr. Mayor. The recommendation says that council endorse the draft governance rules. I would not like to put my hand up to endorse the draft governance rules without fully understanding why certain parts of those rules have been introduced. So that's why I'm asking the question.
Any other questions do you have?
That one and 2 others.
Let's get the 3 of them out and Mr. Mack.
Okay, so an increase in the days from 8 to 10 for submission of notices of motion for councillors. I'd like to know the reason there is a requirement for a further 2 days. The third one is our governance rules were adopted around the same time as our code of conduct and our media engagement policy. And can we expect that these policies will also be reviewed shortly? And my last one is question time. I don't support the removal of must to be replaced by may. Nor for this time to be determined by the CEO. If a member of the community feels strongly enough about an issue to submit a question to council, they should be entitled to be heard and a response provided. Is it not the role of a councillor to represent the voices of our community?
A councillor.
Why then would we remove the ability of our community to be heard through this important process of council?
Sorry, I just wanted to, you asked 3 questions. I'd like to get those answered. So, Mr. Mack.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. The first one regarding notice of motion and the additional 2 days was to allow time for officer comments to be provided for the initial draft run through with councillors. So when the agenda is published, it's fully considered. That's the draft agenda. The second one, there's no plans for review of those 2 policies, or no current plans. And the third one, my understanding was that was a statement regarding the main must, so we can have that conversation further through the process.
Councillor Halstead.
Mr. Mack. Thank you, I'm happy with that.
Happy with that? Thank you. Any other councillor wish to speak to this motion?
Yes, Mr.
Councillor Bauer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, I will stress what Councillor Halstead said, just on a bit of my thunder. As far as question time is concerned, I do not support the change from must to may. This is the only time the community has to interact with the council process in the chamber. We will get community backlash to the rules as they are diminishing transparency and accountability, and to comment and access to the council meetings. I will not be supporting this report.
Thank you, Councillor Bauer. Any other councillor wish to speak to motion? If not, Councillor Rooks in reply.
No further comment.
No further comment. We'll put it to a vote. Those in favour? Those against? The motion is carried.
No, it's not. Division, Mr. Mayor.
Division. Those in favour? Councillor Whelan, Councillor Rooks, Councillor Lasserve, Councillor Lang. Those against? Councillor Bauer and Councillor Halstead. The motion is carried. That brings us to H8, review of instrument of delegation council to staff. Mr. Mack, to introduce the report, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The purpose of this report is to recommend that council adopts the instrument of delegation from council to staff and revoke the previously adopted instrument of delegation. These delegations facilitate the achievement of good governance and effective service delivery by empowering positions to make decisions on behalf of council at the appropriate level. The instrument of delegation has been updated to reflect changes and requirements to a number of relevant acts and regulations. It is recommended to council for adoption. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mack. Can I have a councillor move the motion and a councillor second to Councillor Rooks and Councillor Lasserve? Councillor Rooks.
I think that Mr. Mack has summed it up perfectly. I was going to say the same thing, so thank you, Mr. Mack. That's all.
Thank you, Councillor Rooks. Councillor Lasserve.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I think it's operational, so I think it's important that we have this in place, so I'm happy to support.
Okay, any other councillor wish to speak to the motion? Or shall we put it to a vote?
Yes.
Those in favour? That is carried. Brings us to H9, review of instrument of sub-delegation Environment Protection Act 2017, councils to staff. Mr. Mack, to introduce the report, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Similar to the last report, the purpose of this report is to recommend that council adopts the instrument of sub-delegation Environment Protection Act 2017 from council to staff to achieve good governance and effective service delivery.
Thank you, Mr. Mack. Can I have a councillor move and a councillor second the motion, please? Councillor Rooks, Councillor Lasserve. Councillor Rooks.
Nothing further to add.
Nothing further to add. Councillor Lasserve.
Same comments, Mr Mayor.
Any other councillor wish to speak to the motion? Well, Councillor Rooks, shall we put it to a vote?
Yes.
Those in favour? That is carried. Which brings us to H10, instrument of appointment and authorisation. Mr. Mack, to introduce the report, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This one's slightly different and is to recommend that council appoint named officers as authorised officers under the Planning and Environment Act 1987, Environment Protection Act 2017, and to revoke authorisation for officers that no longer require it. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you, Mr. Mack. Councillor to move, Councillor Rooks. Councillor seconder. Councillor Halstead. Councillor Rooks.
Once again, Mr. Mack took the words right out of my mouth. Thank you. Nothing further to add.
Councillor Halstead.
Operational, happy to vote. Thanks.
Happy to vote on it. Anyone else, any other councillor wish to speak to this motion? If not, Councillor Rooks will put that.
Yes.
Councillor Bauer, you're voting already. You're very excited there. All right, those in favour? That's carried. But Councillor Bauer, I'll ask you to move your camera slightly to your right, so we're picking up your hand. Yeah, I did see it because I'm in the room, but others may not. Which brings us to H11, draft budget 2022-23. Mr. Mack, to introduce the report, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This one's a lot more exciting. And the purpose of this report is to seek council approval to release the draft budget 22-23 and draft fees and charges for community consultation. A financially responsible approach has been applied in setting the draft budget for a robust process of developing revenue and expenditure targets, which has resulted in a proposed 1.75% rate increase in line with the state government rate cap, which represents half the current inflation rate of 3.5% per annum. The draft budget is closely aligned to the long-term financial plan, maintains the scope and standard of existing services, while increasing investment in the future of the Shire through the development of significant intergenerational projects, capital upgrades and renewal of the existing infrastructure network. Council has reviewed the draft fees and charges 22-23, and these have been adjusted to ensure that an equitable balance between user-funded services and ratepayer-funded services is maintained, with some new fees also introduced. A community submission period will be undertaken, and this will close at 5 p.m. on Monday, the 16th of May, and submissions will be considered by Council on Wednesday, the 25th of May. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mack. Have a councillor move the motion and a councillor second. Councillor Lang and Councillor Rooks. Councillor Lang.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This draft budget was developed over a number of months with lots of consultation and feedback from councillors. The draft budget does maintain a very strong working capital position with borrowings within the Victoria Auditor General Officer ratios and an operating surplus of $2.2 million and a balanced funding statement position. I'd just like to note there is an underlying deficit of $3.5 million, and that is attributed to some landfill projects that are considered operational costs However, council has been saving for these over previous years, and we have factored them into our budget. So in that regard, they have been planned for and allocated for according to the correct process. There is a the budget is within the 1.75% state government rate cap, and that is lower than inflation, which, you know, petrol prices will show is kind of going pretty high at the moment, but it doesn't require any reduction of our services or standards having this draft budget within that rate cap. We will continue to invest very strongly in infrastructure delivery with $28.8 million allocated in the Capital Works Plan, including the completion of the Cows Cultural and Community Centre. And we've also included $11.2 million for new leisure and recreation facilities, $14 million to maintain and improve Bass Coast roads and pathways network, $18.6 million on waste services, and it's fantastic also that the user pays approach has been applied, and the standard household waste charge has resulted in approximately $9 or a 1.8% reduction to apply to around 90% of the households. With this being offset by an increase of households to elect to use, it's been offset by an increase of households who elect to use the larger 240 litre landfill bins. So this is the draft budget, and I'm really looking forward to the feedback that we receive from the community on this, and I encourage the community to provide their feedback. We have the Engage Bass Coast website up and running, so that is a really user-friendly way to engage, but we're also providing a number of other ways. So I really look forward to listening to the feedback that we hear on this draft budget.
Thank you, Councillor Lang. Councillor Roche.
Thank you. Councillor Lang has covered most of the things I was going to say, other than I really appreciate the work that council officers has put into this draft budget over the many months that I've seen the briefings come towards us, the updates we've had, and also the opportunities for input. So thank you very much. We are a council that's big on community infrastructure at the moment with our capital works program, as Councillor Lang said, of $28.8 million, and this will increase the livability of our community. But it's really good and very proud to be part of that. Other than that, looking forward to hearing what the community has to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rooks. Any other councillor wish to speak to this motion? Councillor Lasser.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I've always and have been the chair of the Rural Engagement Group, so I'm really pleased to see that it's an item in the draft budget, and it will continue as to support our agricultural community with a rating differential of 80%, plus the opportunity for the farming community to apply for the Rural Land Management Program, which is approximately $665,000. So the value of our rural green open spaces is very important to our coastal communities, and I think that this shows a continuing commitment to that. All in all, I think it's a good draft budget, and I do encourage people to comment, and there's a number of ways that they can do that, and we've got a number of booked in Facebook sessions, I believe. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. So any other councillor wish to speak to the motion? If not, Councillor Lang, in response, please.
Thank you. No, nothing further, Mr Mayor.
Okay, we'll put it to a vote. Those in favour? That's carried. Which brings us to H12, delegated authority to the CEO for acceptance of loan tender quotation. Mr Mack will introduce the report, please.
Thank you, Mayor. The purpose of this report is to recommend the council provide delegation to the CEO to accept a quotation for the purpose of refinancing the $11.7 million one-year funding facility that was established in 2018. Officers will market test this loan, and delegation is required to the CEO to enable the rate to be locked in on the same day as the quotation closure. The use of these borrowings is identified in our long-term financial plan and is tied to the delivery of a number of projects in the Capital Works program. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr Mack. Can I have a councillor move the motion? Councillor Rooks, and a seconder? Looking on the screen as well. Councillor Bauer. Councillor Rooks.
Thanks, Mayor Whelan. It's prudent to check the market for the best option for our loan. And the current problem we have is if a better offer is on the market, it has to go to council for approval. And we could miss the opportunity of a better offer. Therefore, it makes sense to give the CEO the authority to make the decision on our behalf and to take advantage of better financial opportunities in terms of our loan. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rooks. Councillor Bauer.
Nothing further there. I think Councillor looks on that very well, and the CEO has been town trust to execute.
Thank you, Councillor Bauer. Any other councillor wish to speak to this motion? Councillor Rooks, shall we put it to a vote, please? Those in favour? That is carried. It brings us to statutory reports, and I ask the councillor to move and the councillor to second that agenda items 1.1, 1.2, 1.3 and 1.4 be considered as a block.
That's it.
Councillor Bauer, Councillor Lasserve, those in favour? That's carried. Now, is there any councillor wish to speak to any of those reports? Okay. Can we have a councillor move and a councillor second the resolution, that the recommendations attached to items 1.1, 1.2, 1.3 and 1.4 be adopted? I see Councillor Bauer with his hand up, a seconder. Councillor Halstead, those in favour? That's carried. There is no urgent business. Brings us to the mayoral announcement of next meeting of council. The next council meeting will be held on the 18th of May 2022, the Bass Coast Civic Centre Council Chamber, Beaulieu Street East, Wonthaggi, commencing at 1 p.m. Thank you for watching the live stream of council meetings. The meeting will now be closed to the public and will end today's live stream. Thank you very much. I'll hold our positions while that is terminated.